Hey, welcome back. If you were on our first podcast and you came back for the second one, I question your intelligence, but we got through it okay. And I think as we go along, we'll be a little bit better at how we communicate. If you're a new listener, well, thank you. And come on back and we'll talk about it. I think today we're going to go, well, I'll let Paul, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we discussed it last week, and I think expectation is a good place for us to start. Because expectation, whether it's business, life, or golf, expectation, it probably creates the most angst in people. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do. And in a business, expectation is, when you first think of an idea, you shoot for the moon and you think, oh my God, I'm going to end up selling this all over, or you're going to start a business or an accounting practice or something. And the first thing you have to do is set your expectations, understanding that if you are selling or doing something that somebody else is already doing, then you better do some research as to how they're doing it and how they're making out with it. Because in business, if you're in business, remember, every new business you get, you're going to be taking from somebody else. Unless you're the guy that invents the hula hoop, but even the hula hoop didn't take long before somebody else came up with a knockoff of the hula hoop, so that you always, in business, you always plan, as soon as you come out with a new product or a new thing, and this is going out a little bit too far, but you always say, okay, what's the life expectancy of this particular product before somebody else comes up with it or somebody comes up with something better. So you're always looking, you're always ready. You always have to be ready for the next competitor.
So in terms of research, how would, like in this day and age, you could almost over-research something today. In research, what would they be looking for specifically?
Well, what they have to look for is basically you come up with your item or your business strategy and you see where the competition is. You see what their pricing is. You see what the market will hold. And then you have to come back to yourself and say, okay, can I do this? Now, what most people do is where they get caught is they don't stop there, because then they go to the very end and say, well, within the 3 years, I'm going to be selling this to them and this to that. Don't go that far. It's too soon for you to think about that. There's too many obstacles in your way, and you'll just get disappointed. Start out with little steps. Let's go. Let's see where we can show the product or we show our services. Who do we talk to? Talk to friends that are already in a similar business and see what they have to say. The important thing to get started is do as much research as possible before you take the next step. And be prepared to say, this is a bad idea. I shouldn't go any further.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, isn't that really the reason you're going to do your research? Not to see if a product is viable per se, but to see if what I'm planning on a product to do is viable or not. Isn't it very personal?
Yeah, it's the same thing. When you start playing golf, and you can tell me, and you're playing pretty good, and you have these used or cheap clubs, and then you say, you're playing with some guys, and they got a new driver, or they got a new set. They said, well, they'll tell you, well, you need a new set of clubs. Well, that's an expectation. And I'm not so sure just going about a set of clubs without doing some research. Am I right?
Yeah. All right. So expectation. What's funny with when people decide to start playing golf, they're kind of looking at the expectations. I'm going to play as good as my friend who's teaching me, or as good as my dad. That's where I'm going to get, rather quickly, because it doesn't look like that difficult a game. The ball's not moving. It's sitting right there. Everybody's quiet, everything just like lines up to be so perfect. And then they realize that they don't know how to swing the club. Well, I guess like in business, you realize, oh wait, how do I promote my business? Or how do I get the first customer? This is an expectation that's way far down the road. And I agree, because in golf, I would recommend to anybody, just borrow somebody's club. Doesn't matter. Just borrow somebody's club and go to a practice range. I don't go to a driving range because I think that's a misnomer. You don't go there to just hit drives. You go there to practice. So grab one of your friends' golf club. Doesn't matter what it is. Pick a 7-iron and go to the range with them and just learn to hit that 7-iron. Because golf clubs have different length shafts. Sometimes the grips are a little worn, a little different. So just take that one club and see if you have the mentality. And I'm not putting anybody down when I say this, but you have to have a very strong mentality, a kind of self-masochistic like of yourself to be able to beat yourself up the way you're going to during a round. And a lot of that beating up really comes because they don't learn how to hit shots. And to me, that's like learning how to sell a product. You know, like you said, it's a brown bag.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what's in it. It's a brown bag.
It's a brown bag. It doesn't make any difference what's in it. And you've got to get that past, you got to get past that. You want to have the best. You always do, but you're not always going to have the best. But do you have the best sales pitch? Do you have the best pricing? Do you have what it takes to get you to the next level?
Right.
And that's what's important.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So as you're looking and you're trying to start a new business, you have to look at, like I said, make sure the competition is within striking range for you, and then put some numbers to the paper. If you're going to buy a product offshore, how's that going to work? If you're going to be making your own product, or if you're going to do a service industry is a big one. You know, what are you offering, and how's that going to change what people think about what's going forward? So these are all things you put down on a sheet of paper, and you say, okay, this is what I think I can offer. And when you said it, when it's all said and done, quite frankly, if you say, you know what, the market's too crowded, the prices are out of line.
Right. Supply chain is bad right now.
And the investment is too great of a risk for me at this point in time, which means it may not be a bad idea. It may be a bad time to do it.
Right. Okay. Now, investment, that's a good part of the expectation that people have. In golf, and again, the reason, and we've talked about this, the reason you go to a secondhand store and you buy your first set of clubs, or so maybe one of your friends or somebody at work just got a new set of clubs. Take their clubs and use their clubs for the first year that you're trying to figure out what this game is all about. There is no reason, none, to go out and spend $1,000 on a set of used top name clubs just because you think there's a look you have to have out there. That you're going to go out and spend $200 on a nice pair of shoes, and you're going to make sure that you have the nicest glove, or, you know, oh, I got to buy a dozen of the best balls that are out there. That expectation is setting you up to failure right away, because none of that stuff makes any difference if you haven't gone to a range and practiced how to hit shots. And I try and equate that so many times when I try and take people to ranges and show them things. They don't understand that the expectation that they have on themselves is actually going to become the thing that people laugh at and make fun of when they go out on the course itself, you know, and they don't see that because they haven't, how can I put this? They haven't played enough golf to understand what it does to your self-confidence when you try and play, and now it's your friends making fun of you and your ability to play this game. And that's the number one driver of people leaving the course. And to me, that can get pushed to the side if your ego starts to understand that, oh, well, I've been going to the range, I've been learning how to hit this shot and this shot. So I expect to do okay on the course with these shots, but all these shots I haven't practiced, I'm probably going to look pretty bad on.
Yeah, but you know, the one thing people think about when it comes to golf is that I don't want to embarrass myself.
Yeah, okay? but you will. It's the nature of the game.
If you're with a bunch of guys that make fun of you and everything else, find new guys.
Oh, I totally agree with you. That is the wrong foursome.
That's the wrong foursome. Get out of that foursome because they're idiots.
Yeah. Those are not people you want to play golf with.
No.
You know, if you want to be friends with them, and you know, and that's fine when you're hanging around, I don't know, doing something else, and you get that goof around, that's great. But when you goof around on other stuff, the self-confidence hit is nowhere near as big as it is when you're on a golf course. And people are talking about your ability to do something so simple yet so difficult.
Yeah, that's right. And the same thing with business. When you sit down and you decide, this is what I'm going to do, this is my commitment to this particular project or this particular, whatever you want to do, product or whatever it is, you're going to get criticized.
Oh, yeah.
And you say, you can't do this. You're going to hear a lot of people say, you can't do it. You can't. It just won't work. That won't work. That's something you got to put in the back of your head.
Yeah.
And if you can't answer those questions, then you may have a problem trying to start this business.
Oh, absolutely.
If everybody questions, well, what about this? If you don't have a legitimate answer to those questions, then once you get past that, where you can answer all those questions and tell people, no, this is how I'm going to do this. Well, how are you going to do that? And you keep going through the process. Okay, well, how are you going to get the product?
Right.
Where are you going to store the product? Stuff like that. And then you can say, okay, it's on paper. Next thing to do is let's see about going the next step and seeing where the market really is and how do I get to it.
Right. Because let's shift over to life for a minute, right? Because life is now divided into two things. Life is divided into person to person and social media. All right. And I preclude social media as person to person because it's not. You're putting stuff out there, not for any one person, and you're not going to get any feedback when you say it from that other person. And to me, that's the anonymity of the internet has made it what it is. And it's become a not fun environment. But now go back to when you were 15 and, there's that cute girl again, and I just want to go over. Yeah, but what happens if I strike out? Well, what happens if you strike out?
When I was 15, I decided I wanted to go into a business, and my mom said, well, you got money, because they had about 8 people I'd mowed their lawns for, so I had, for me, a lot of money at the time.
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted to do the mail order business, and it was Lilly and Vernon. We're talking decades ago. I didn't even know if they're still around, Lilly and Vernon. But anyway, what you would do is buy the blank catalogs with your name on them. Right. They put your name on it, and then they give you a mailing list, and you mail them out. Right. So I got this, and I think I got 500 calories, and I went. They got a DBA under my mother's name. I wasn't old enough, and I opened a safe deposit box. Right. I mean, a post office box.
Post office box, right.
And I mailed them out, and I rode my bike. It was about a mile away every day down to that post office box with all the expectations that I thought, this is the start of something really great. I got one order for $4.85. Right? Now, I could have said at that point in time, well, why am I even trying?
Yeah. Right.
So right at that time, you make the decision, you get back up on the bike, and you go back to what you do best, was doing the lawns, and you wait until you do something else. Right. And something else will come along, and it did come along for me. Right. But that's failure. You learn from failure.
Everything.
Yeah. Everything I've ever learned is from failure.
Absolutely.
It's easy to win. It's harder to recover.
Yeah, and that's a good way of putting it. And because I know that isn't the old adage in business that you have to go through 97 or 98 no's to get to your yes, and that the whole point of it is to, well, if I want to sell 5 products, I got to talk to 500 people, so I get a bunch of no's.
Yeah, that's how I was trained that way. I was trained that way that, listen, you'll probably get 1 sales call out of 5. So if I went in and, if you don't have thick skin, every time I got a no, I would thank the person, because that means 1 out of the way. I'm 1 closer to a sale. And if you don't have that kind of an attitude when you start out your business, you're going to eat yourself up, and you're not going to be successful. Okay.
Right. Yeah. See, and that now in golf, especially when you're at the range, now you talk about that ratio. I mean, if you think about, if you're a golfer and you're watching us, how many times do you go to a range and hit 20 balls and with 1 club and actually ask yourself, did that ball stop rolling where I was aiming? What would the percentage of people be? Less than 1% of the people who use the range? Less than 0.5%? How many people just go up to a range and just whack? It's a range whack.
That's right.
Right? They just go up there and they put a ball down, they hit it. Put a ball down, hit it. Oh, that one was pretty good. Put a ball. And have no idea what they're doing right or wrong. They're not learning a thing.
My uncle, who was a club pro, and he used to get new clubs every year, and he would hand them down to me, which only God could hit him. Anyway, I remember he was giving me a lesson on a tee, and he had a dry sense of humor. So we're hitting the balls. At the end of it, he comes up to me and he whispers in my ear. He says, "Horseshoes," and he walks away. He thinks I shouldn't have. No, I hopefully, I never did ask him for real if that was true or he would just give me a hard time.
That's so funny.
I went with the hard time.
You went with the hard time.
I remember that. He whistles in my ear, John, horseshoes. He just walks away.
He just walks away.
Yeah,
that's so funny. See, and that's the thing that you don't want to hear. Why don't you give this up? And again, I'll go back to asking the girl out when you're 15. You're gonna sorry, I was just thinking there was an episode of Married with Children where Bud was at a shoot with his sister, and there were like 3 hot models, and Bud was always the kid that loser type guy, never really never had any success with anything. He walks up to the first girl and says something like, hey, how would you like a nice, cool Bud? Because that was his name. And she slaps him, right? He goes, next. Walks up to the second girl, says something, quippy like that. And she slaps him. She goes, next, never gave up. And that just reminds me of the attitude that a golfer has to have. That you've got to be able to understand that when a guy like Byron Nelson, and you can look him up, Byron Nelson said that you're going to hit 7 bad shots in every round, but amateurs shouldn't keep count. When a professional hits a bad shot, you don't even notice it. He pulled it to the left side of the green. He's 25 feet from the pin. A lot of golfers look at that and go, all right, he's pin high. That's a simple little chip, big deal. True. That guy out in the fairway is going, oh, man. He hit that shot bad. Professional. So at your level, if you're just learning, if you can hit the ball straight 50 yards, you succeeded.
Absolutely.
And if you can do that twice, you succeeded. I can remember playing golf up in Nova Scotia. My father was playing with an old hockey friend of his. And this guy was in his 70s at that time. I swear he was hitting a slap shot. Every single shot looked like a slap shot. But you could have dropped the ball in the middle of the fairway on every single shot. He didn't hit it far, but he walked a straight line to the green because that's where his ball was. Yep. And of course, I'm up there. I'm, 19, 20 years old. Watch me, and I bang this 270 drive with Woodwoods, by the way.
Yes.
Off to the right into the woods, and there's my dad going, we'll meet you up at the green. As I go walking that way to punch it out of the woods.
So I think what we're telling you is like in the business, you got a product, you got an idea, then go out and market it, see what the results are, see what people think. It may have some legs, or they'll tell you, well, this would be a better idea if you offered this. And then you make a mental note of it and you go back and you redo what you're thinking before you go to the next level.
Right. And really, that's why this is a business life golf podcast.
So the next podcast, we're going to drill down a little farther.
Yeah.
Maybe make you a little uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think the next one, people should start understanding where the uncomfortableness lies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
And tell your friends. And if you have a question, what do they do about it, Paul?
Well, if I have a question, we'd love you to send it in the comments so that everybody else can read it. And we'll come on and we'll start answering some of these comments. Please subscribe. We do want to know what you think and who you are. And we'll see you next week.